Imagine you are standing on a European harbor in the year 1560. In front of you are wooden sailing ships, their masts creaking in the wind, sailors shouting through the salty mist. And then, from the horizon, a strange sound appears. Not the sound of waves. Not the sound of wind. But a steady, mechanical, cold roar. A massive ship, made of metal, belching black smoke, moves straight into the harbor. It needs no wind. No sails. It moves by the power of fire and water itself. And in that very moment, history, as we know it, collapses. What you just imagined, could have happened. Not science fiction. But a real possibility that humanity almost triggered. We are taught that the Industrial Revolution began around 1760. But that is only when it exploded. Not when it became possible. Because if you go back to the year 1560, you will find a disturbing truth: all the pieces were already there. Technology, resources, economic pressure, and even the core ideas. Everything was ready. It only lacked a push. So the question is no longer, what would happen if the Industrial Revolution began in 1560, but rather, why didn't it happen? And this is where things become dangerous. Because there is a hypothesis that very few people dare to say: perhaps humanity was saved from its own progress by a delay of 200 years. We always believe that progress is good. Faster is better. Technology is salvation. But what if that isn't true? What if progressing too early is actually the fastest path to collapse? Some modern economists believe that if industrialization had begun in the 16th century, humanity might have reached our current technological level long ago, but at the cost of a planet no longer capable of sustaining life. To understand this, we need to break a major illusion, that people of the Renaissance worked backward. The truth is the opposite. They did not lack intelligence. They did not lack creativity. What they lacked was the right trigger at the right time. Let's start with clockmakers. It sounds simple. But in the 16th century, these were high-precision engineers. They built machines with hundreds of tiny parts, operating in near-perfect synchronization. Metal gears, complex regulating mechanisms, all of it was the foundation of industrial machinery. If you can build a clock, you can build a loom. If you can control time, you can control production. But here's the twist few people notice. When humans began measuring time precisely, they also began measuring life. Labor was no longer a natural activity. It became a unit. Something that could be optimized. Something that could be exploited. If this had happened 200 years earlier, human society might have become a massive machine long ago. And then we arrive at a place no one expects: monasteries. In many people's imagination, monasteries are isolated places where people pray and live simply. But reality was different. Some monasteries were advanced production centers. They managed land, operated workshops, optimized costs. They understood productivity, efficiency, and even profit. There is evidence they reached remarkable levels of metallurgy. And then, it all disappeared. Destroyed. Erased. And this is where a controversial hypothesis emerges. What if that destruction was not just political, but an accidental, or deliberate, interruption of a revolution in progress? Imagine if those centers had continued. If they kept developing technology. If they connected to trade networks. Just a few decades, and the world might have entered the industrial age in the 16th century. But technology does not run itself. It needs ideas. And there is no clearer symbol of that than a genius everyone knows. His drawings were not just art. They were engineering. Mechanisms, transmission systems, automation, all of it could work. But he lived in a world that was not ready. This is a key point: history is not just about what humans can do, but what they can deploy. Ideas can be centuries ahead of their time. But without a supporting ecosystem, they die on paper. And by 1560, that ecosystem was beginning to form. Especially as energy pressure increased. As wood became scarce, people were forced to find alternatives. And they found coal. But coal was not easy to use. It required new technology. It forced innovation. And this pressure triggered progress. This leads to a difficult truth: progress does not come from desire, but from pressure. And when pressure appears earlier, progress comes earlier. But consequences also come earlier. And then there is the final factor: profit. There is no stronger motivation than money. When machines become cheaper than labor, they will replace humans. Not because they are better, but because they are more economically efficient. And once this process begins, it cannot be stopped. These are not isolated factors. They are a chain of dominoes. And in 1560, all the dominoes were ready. Only one push was missing. So let's assume that push happens. And this is where we enter different timelines. In one timeline, a European empire recognizes the potential of technology early. They invest. They expand. And within decades, they surpass the rest of the world. No more sailing ships. No more wars fought with swords and spears. But machines, factories, and an economy that cannot be rivaled. In another timeline, an Eastern civilization harnesses technology before the West. And history is reversed. No colonial era as we know it. No European dominance. Instead, the world is shaped by a completely different center of power. In yet another timeline, industrialization does not separate from religion, but merges with it. Technology becomes a tool to understand the universe. Religious institutions become industrial corporations. And power reaches an unprecedented level. But in all these timelines, there is one constant. A price. A consequence no one can avoid. The environment. If industrialization had begun 200 years earlier, then what we call climate change today might have happened long ago. With no technology to stop it. No awareness to warn about it. No system to control it. Imagine a world where by the 19th century, the ice had melted. Sea levels had risen. Coastal cities had disappeared. No time to adapt. No chance to fix mistakes. And then a question arises. A question you cannot easily answer. Perhaps, we are living in the luckiest timeline. Not because we progressed the fastest. But because we progressed slowly enough to avoid destroying ourselves too early. Or perhaps, we are only delaying the inevitable. So if you could go back to 1560, and bring one modern technology, what would you choose? A machine to accelerate progress? Or a solution to prevent it? Because that choice could determine the fate of all humanity. If you believe we should move faster, comment accelerate. If you think slowing down saved us, comment delay. And perhaps, the most important question is not what would happen if the Industrial Revolution began earlier. But who, or what, ensured that it didn't happen? But if you think the story ends at, "it could have happened," then you are missing the most terrifying part. Because history is not just what happened. It is also what almost happened, and was stopped at the last moment. And sometimes, what was stopped reveals more about the nature of this world, than what actually occurred. Let's return to 1560. Not through vague imagination, but through a more concrete lens. Follow a miner. He works deep in a silver mine. No electric light. No modern machines. Only human strength, ropes, and crude tools. But there is a major problem: water. Mines constantly flood. And each time it happens, work stops. Profits vanish. Owners lose money. And then, a solution appears. A device that can pump water out of the mine. Not by human strength, but by a mechanism using pressure and heat. A primitive engine. Not perfect. Not efficient like what we know today. But enough to change the game. If that device were improved, if it were invested in, if it were scaled, then the steam engine might have appeared in the 16th century. And if that happened, everything after it would follow in a chain reaction. This is the essence of the domino effect in history. One invention does not change the world, but it creates the conditions for other inventions to appear faster. And once that chain begins, it accelerates exponentially. But there is a small, and dangerous, detail we often overlook. Not every invention is accepted. Not every technology is deployed. History is full of ideas that were ignored, rejected, or forgotten. And the reason is not always technical unreadiness. Sometimes, it is because they are too dangerous. Imagine a noble, a merchant, or even a king in 1560 being presented with a machine that could replace hundreds of workers. It sounds appealing, but also terrifying. Because if you replace too many people, you create instability. You create unemployment. You create rebellion. And here is a perspective rarely discussed. Perhaps industrialization was delayed not because of a lack of technology, but because society was not ready to its consequences. Think about it. A world where thousands lose their jobs within a few years. No welfare system. No concept of career transition. No mass education. Only resentment. And that resentment could erupt into violence. If this happened in the 16th century, when power was fragile and political systems unstable, early industrialization might not lead to progress, but to collapse. But suppose that doesn't stop it. Suppose a nation accepts the risk. And that is where a specific timeline begins to form. In this timeline, an empire recognizes the potential of machines. They are not afraid of the consequences. They invest heavily. They build production facilities. They exploit resources at an unprecedented rate. And within decades, they surpass everyone. At first, this brings benefits. Production increases. Trade explodes. Power expands. But then, the first signs appear. The air begins to change. Water sources become polluted. Forests disappear faster than ever. But no one stops. Because profits are too great. Because competition is too fierce. Because once you start, you cannot go back. This is a pattern we see throughout history. When a technology provides an advantage, it will be used. Not because it is right, but because if you don't use it, someone else will. And then we enter the acceleration phase. No longer small improvements, but massive leaps. Transportation changes. Warfare changes. Society changes. Imagine a war in 1650, but with 19th century technology. Armies no longer move by horse, but by mechanized transport. Battles are no longer decided over months, but within days. This does not just change the outcome of wars. It changes how humans think about power. And when power changes, everything else follows. But all of this is still not the darkest part. The darkest part is time. If industrialization began 200 years earlier, then all its consequences also arrived 200 years earlier. Not just pollution. Not just war. But the entire trajectory of humanity. Imagine that by 1800, the world had already reached emission levels we only touched in the 20th century. But with no climate science. No data. No warnings. Only consequences. Melting ice. Rising seas. Extreme weather. But to people of that time, it would all just be natural disasters. No one connects the dots. No one understands they are the cause. And so, they continue. This is a dangerous loop. one we have only begun to recognize in the modern era. But if it had started earlier, it might have been too late to escape. And this is where another timeline becomes significant. In this timeline, humanity progresses too fast. So fast that it surpasses its ability to control itself. Technology advances. But ethics cannot keep up. Power increases. But responsibility does not rise accordingly. The result? A collapse. Not immediate. Not from a single event. But from a chain of overlapping crises. Economic, environmental, social. And eventually, the system can no longer the strain. Humanity does not disappear. But it is pushed back. A new, dark age. Not due to lack of knowledge, but due to the loss of the ability to sustain systems. If that happened, then the history we know might be a second attempt. A controversial idea. But think about it, how many civilizations have vanished without us ever knowing? How many times has humanity come close to a leap, only to step back? And if that is true, then the question is no longer, why are we slow, but, have we ever been faster before? Perhaps 1560 was not the first time the opportunity appeared. Perhaps it was just the most recent. And if so, what stopped it? Was it ignorance? Technological limits? Or some form of natural balance, where every time humanity moves too fast, something pulls it back? This is not a question with a clear answer. But it is one you should think about. Because we are living in a moment very similar to 1560. Technology is accelerating. Pressure is increasing. And all the factors are once again converging. This time, will we cross the limit? Or will we repeat the same cycle? If you believe humanity is moving in the right direction, comment forward. If you think we are moving too fast, comment too fast. And remember, perhaps the most important question is not what would happen if the Industrial Revolution began earlier. But, are we starting another revolution that we are not ready to face?